is a great dream possessed by millions of men on Earth. The dream of reaching out into space to look at another planet. But for some men, reaching out to another planet no longer seems a dream at all. Deep in this huge complex of buildings and computers, a handful of men have spent years striving to make that dream a reality. And now they are about to have their chance. One single try, as, for the first time in history, men encounter Mars. A team of men secluded inside NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory at Pasadena, California, will encounter Mars through the eyes of a spacecraft launched from Earth 8 months ago. The director of the lab is Dr. William Pickering, organizer of the teams that built the first U.S. Earth satellite, the Rangers that photographed the moon, the Mariner probe to Venus, and the Mariner 4 team now about to face its most momentous challenge.
We're about to encounter the planet Mars with a spacecraft built here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Down in that building, the television and press are gathering, and when it flies by the planet, they will report to the world what the spacecraft is able to see and discover about Mars. But what the press and television and the rest of the world cannot see is the actual encounter of Mars by the men who are experiencing the encounter. Down there in another building, the Spaceflight Operations Building, a team of scientists and engineers is talking to the spacecraft, listening to it, controlling it.
Behind doors closed to public view, you are about to see the human side of this event, the encounter through the faces of men. As the voice of the spacecraft speaks in the form of graph lines and numbers transmitted across 134 million miles of space and picked up by tracking stations from South Africa to California, the members of the flight operations team, 200 in all, approach some of the most important hours of their lives, the realization or possible failure of a dream.
If they control it well and make all the right decisions, and if all goes well, they will achieve a feat unique in the history of science. Success of the mission depends on what kind of men they are and how well they stand up under tremendous pressure.
I had a comment on my last video that said, "Space is BS. Time to unsubscribe." I thought that was kind of hilarious. In fact, there was like at least 3 different comments where another guy was just asking if anybody had looked into this flat Earth thing. It was a pretty long comment. It was pretty sincere, and then somebody replied to him, kind of saying they were looking into it too. And it's interesting that keeps happening, especially when, I'll put up videos that don't have anything saying, they don't specifically mention flat Earth in the title. And if you play anything in the first few minutes as like an example of the propaganda or whatever, and if somebody's kind of new and they don't understand that that's what you're doing, I mean, it goes to show like how we've come a long way from it just being what was originally a pretty close-knit YouTube community of crazy flat Earth people. It's like it continues to spread. And so, unfortunately though, those comments, along with all the other ones, are gone with the video itself that was taken down. And I'm not going to go on and on about this, but I did want to kind of let everyone know that, the other day I woke up to an email from the YouTube legal team or whatever, informing me that somebody had filed a privacy complaint, and the video had just been taken down. So that was a new one. Not encountered that one before. So yeah, it had nothing to do with copyright, nothing to do, it wasn't a community guideline strike, not any kind of a strike. It's just when you look into the, what the YouTube privacy guidelines are all about, literally it has to be first party or the legal representation of a first party where like their personal information, it's supposedly to protect against people being doxxed or, you're posting personal information about someone else on the internet, which obviously you'd want to prevent that from happening. So, wow. Let's see, what did I talk about? I played a little clip from Joe Rogan at the beginning. I talked about the Kardashev scale and Nikolai Kardashev. I mentioned Carl Sagan. And, I talked about the Divine Council and Michael Heiser. Maybe I inadvertently revealed some details about Nikolai Kardashev. That must be it. Obviously YouTube isn't giving me any details or doesn't say what part of the video, doesn't tell me anything. It's interesting too that supposedly they're supposed to give you 48 hours to act on the complaint and maybe cut that part out of your video or whatever, but no, they just took it down. There doesn't seem to be any way to even contest it, so how interesting. You want to just be able to have discussions about particular doctrines, and again, to me, it's not even about a particular individual, but then it kind of begs the question, is even pushing back on this particular teaching? Can you do it without even getting into certain individuals? It's just kind of bizarre. And the sad part is that I wish I could say I was shocked, but I'm honestly not at this point after however many years. I have seen that, like, a lot of times it's like you get the most kind of pushback and insane reactions from people, like from other ministries or Christians oftentimes. I've had all kinds of crazy threats and stuff over various things over the years. And so, yeah, it's really not that shocking, but it... of course, it's like, what do you think? I'm not going to say anything? Do you think it's really going to accomplish whatever, making this kind of a false, it's absurd. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it seems like as good a time as any to remind everyone that you can go watch this video, The Gods Who Die Like Men, Aliens, Enoch, and the Divine Council Controversy. It is up on my Odyssey channel, and you can go watch it there, along with, probably at least a dozen or so videos that are no longer on my YouTube channel that have been taken down for various reasons. But yeah, this was a new one, and, it is frustrating and disappointing when you put work into something, and it was just under 40,000 views in less than a week, so... The thing that I was encouraged by was that in the comments and in emails with quite a number of people, we were able to have like real mature, respectful discussion and debate, and I think that is healthy. I think that is important. I think we need to be able to challenge our own assumptions, challenge things that are popular or... Yeah, so it's frustrating that people would resort to something this ultimately childish and cowardly. You can go watch it yourself and see that, like, there's no personal information, there's nobody's privacy is being infringed upon when you're talking about things that are all publicly available, whether it's documentaries or books or lectures, and they're all out in the public view. They're being discussed left and right by all these people. I'm not talking about anything about anyone's personal life. It's a joke, it's just an absolute absurd complaint. So, but what you gonna do? Yeah, so I'm more bummed out about losing those comments than I am because, like I said, the video's still up and got the message out. More important than anything, for me, it was like I just kind of wanted to get all that stuff out of my brain that I'd been immersed in for several weeks, and it's just kind of that cathartic process of, I really want to look into this for myself, and then I can kind of just share my thoughts. You can take it or leave it, it's not... I don't have some axe to grind or some, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing, what I'm reading, what I'm hearing, how it's prompted me to go deeper into the scripture and examine the scriptures verses in a way that I had not done before. And that's always a good thing. When something prompts you to like look deeper into the word, and even just like reflect more deeply on what it means to believe in scripture itself. And, those things, especially if you've been around the Bible your whole life, these terms and ideas kind of just become, cliche after a while. So yeah, I was actually pretty proud of that conversation and the research. So if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. And remember that, like, if this whole channel goes down, which could happen at any time for whatever reason, all my stuff is still up on Odyssey, and I do have the blog too, which I could start posting to again. It's been a lot of years since I've done that. But, as soon as I got it up, and I was able to kind of come out of the Divine Council rabbit hole, and it was like kind of crazy to then just be snapped back into the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. And it's just another sobering reminder of like the scale of, call it persecution, call it corruption, call it evil, call it, globalism, just call it plain inhumanity. The media machine being a huge part of it, the government being, it's gaslighting, it's mass lighting. I heard that term recently. I was like, oh, that's very clever. Mass lighting. Yes, because that's, it's kind of the common denominator with everything as time goes on, whether it's like the open border and how many people are coming in, the economy and the whole political theater, this event, I mean, the devastation is mind-boggling. And, all the families and all the people who were, I can't imagine losing family members and not even knowing where they are, having somebody go missing. I mean, this is the perspective that it's like, apparently you're kind of not living, if you're getting offended over like somebody pushing back on doctrines about angels and script, if that's your biggest concern, then I don't know what what world you're living in. How dissociated you'd have to be threatened by honest biblical critique. We're all supposedly brothers and sisters in Christ, and we have the freedom to, we're supposed to be good Bereans, and we're supposed to be testing everything and clinging to that which is good. But we live in a dissociated culture and a dissociated society, a dissociated, a media, a mass media that's like their whole job. The cosmology question is more than just another debate over like what the Bible really teaches. It obviously it has some pretty stunning ramifications and implications about the nature of the world that we live in today. Not just with what the shape of the cosmos is, but in terms of how manipulated by the media, how much control and influence and deception has really been achieved. The mass education system and the scope of it, that I understand why it's offensive to people, and it just, they can't, when you think about like, okay, the JPL in 1965 claiming to be receiving messages from 134 million miles away, but in reality it's probably coming from more like 134 feet in another building. And then fast forward to today, 60 years later, and we just had the Polaris Dawn. Like, is anybody even, I really want to know, like, how many people are still really buying this? Their little EVA with their super sleek spacesuits that just are absolutely ridiculous. And, they're still doing the hairspray trick and having Zoom calls with, it's all the same junk. It's like once you can really allow yourself to think that like, yeah, this is just being filmed in a studio somewhere, maybe in an anti-gravity plane, but probably not even that most of the time. I think they're just using CGI and whatever else, doing this propagandistic nonsense. We've gone from the 60s and, we need men. It was all about the engineers and scientists and the test pilots who were men who would have to endure through intense pressure. And, now it's like it's a Zoom call with St. Jude's Hospital. You're promoting charities and playing a Star Wars theme song with orchestras from around the world. I mean, and then, here we are trying to make sense out of this insane amount of water that somehow went that far inland and it was like it just dumped. Even if the storm itself was a complete natural event, an act of God, you still can't get away from the conclusion that the response or lack thereof is completely intentional. How many people over the past just few years between Lahaina and, I remember all the entire West Coast was on fire back in like 2020. We see these things going on around the world with like weather warfare, or, it's all climate change, right? But the Kardashev scale narrative, controlling the weather, is just a perfectly rational goal to achieve for the betterment of the environment and sustainability and all that. But of course, there's nothing diabolical about it. You can never weaponize weather manipulation, right? It would only be used for good. I mean, that's the same wall that you bump into with people, no matter what the topic really is. Anything to do with like the government and the question of, are they really working for the good of humanity, or is there some other objective? Is there some other agenda going on? I mean, it really is kind of like trying to do an intervention with someone who's a totally abusive relationship or a cult, and they don't see that they're in an abusive relationship, Stockholm Syndrome or whatever. Whether it's the government or science, it's a religion. You dare suggest the man never walked on the moon or never flew at 17,000 miles an hour in a capsule? I mean, it's one thing when it was in the 60s and it was like 3 dudes in a little Apollo capsule, going to the moon. But, here we are now, and you got 2 women and 2 men in a capsule claiming that they supposedly orbited like higher than the ISS, and it's the furthest from Earth that any astronauts have ever flown since Apollo. And they're always trying to find ways to set a new record, and it's just a PR stunt. But I was thinking about it like, okay, ladies, how many of you would be excited about spending 5 days in a cramped capsule? Even if you weren't going 17,000 miles an hour, just 5 days chilling in a capsule with 2 men and 2 women, and of course nobody's married to each other. This isn't the ISS where you have your little vacuum toilet nonsense with a curtain. There's no curtain. 5 days. I'm sure that, it's totally absurd. And like their hair, you'd have to put your hair up, in like a really tight bun or something just to get the helmet on. This ridiculous looking helmet. But then when you take the spacesuit off, you don't keep your hair up in a bun. You just let it stick out, because you gotta show the zero gravity. The idea that these spacesuits would keep you alive in a vacuum, it's so dumb. Sorry, I had to rant about these stupid spacesuits a little bit. It's literally the same. It's literally just like Hollywood, where they have no new ideas. They just have to redo old stuff and try and pass it off as new. It's literally what SpaceX is. Using the same little bag of special effects tricks to try and sell a whole new generation on the same nonsense. I really think it's more than just trying to come up with a scientific proof for evolution and excuse to teach millions of people that we all evolved out of protozoa millions of years ago and all that. But there really is a dissociation, part of creating a dissociated state within the world around you. Like how disconnected from the natural world most modern people are. I think about this all the time. All the time. The majority of what people are experiencing and taking in is through a screen or through, audio and video, more than just the world around them, the physical world. And then we have these events where it's like, oh yeah, we are pretty fragile, mortal human beings, and all of our technology and our infrastructure, like the roads and the telephone poles, it's like the amount of devastation is unreal. And it's like you can't even think about all that stuff because how many people are still missing. If the mainstream media isn't shoving it down your throat, like with a death ticker with COVID, then it doesn't register with a lot of people. In a week it'll be on to the next thing. Everyone's just on this perpetual cycle of being gaslit through the media and then distracted through media. It's such a weird time to be alive. To even have to be thinking about weaponized weather or intentionally caused chaos of whatever kind. Mars is the god of war, but it's like it's a different kind of war. And it's like how much of the war is psychological and how much of it is through all these other asymmetrical types of tactics. And I mean, dude, Bibi Netanyahu calling the UN the anti-Israel Flat Earth Society. It's like you can't write this stuff.
In this anti-Israel Flat Earth Society,
it's beyond surreal. Was it like a week or two ago the Pope came out saying that all religions basically lead to God? I haven't even really looked into that one yet, but that seems like it should be historically significant. Wars and rumors of wars. Rumors of wars. Where it's like you don't even know what's I mean, these rockets that Iran supposedly 180 ballistic missiles or rockets or whatever they want to call them. You know, because that's what you would do when you're attacking another country. You're going to fire a big line of missiles, like all single file in the sky, and then they're going to have big bright exhaust plumes that you can see, they're just, so you have something to film. You got to have something to film to then report, but of course they didn't even kill any Israelis. Pretty effective. Yeah. How much theater is really going on here? It's pretty astounding. But then the fallout and the death and the devastation, the destroyed lives are completely real. I mean, I get why people don't even want to pay attention, because it's exhausting emotionally and, spiritually, and it's true that you have to find a balance between being able to live your own life in the real world, going out and touching grass, being in the sun, doing things with your hands, building things, playing ball with your kids, whatever. We all have bills to pay, and we have to be grounded in a real, tangible life around you. But then so many people just want to tune everything out, and COVID is well, that's ancient history. We memory hold 6 different things since then. It's a lot for people to have to process. I don't know. I mean, I went back and was listening to this interview. It's been a few years since I'd listened to it. This woman, Kay Griggs, who was the wife of a colonel in the Marine Corps, and she did this interview 1998, so before 2001, and talking about all the crazy things she learned during the course of being married to a colonel. He was very high up in NATO, and she eventually had, she's basically talking about how the whole military-industrial complex is a big satanic sex cult, and she just casually mentions how the Cold War the Cold War is total BS. It's all made up. And she wasn't a flat earther. She wasn't coming at it from that angle at all. She was coming at it from somebody who was married to a colonel of NATO. So yeah, you should, I'll leave a link if you haven't listened to that, but it's crazy to listen to that 40 years later, and so much of what she was saying then that would have sounded probably very, crazy to most people then. How much of it is just common knowledge today? Okay, everything that's gone down with Epstein and Diddy, and everybody's talking about that level of how politics and entertainment has run for years and years. Yesterday's conspiracy is now today's reality, at least on some level. It's an overwhelming amount of deception and corruption and just plain evil. And for me, the whole point in even talking about any of this, all this heavy stuff, all this dark stuff, all the deception, or whether in the theoretical or theological levels or the government and the media, the whole point of this is to be able to say, yes, this is real, and it's pretty scary and overwhelming a lot of the time. But it's worth it being able to look at it with eyes wide open if you allow it to bring you back to the source of all that is truly good and upright and worth fighting for. If it brings you back to God, if it brings you back to your Creator, if it brings you back to the truth of what this battle is all about, at the end of the day, I'm preaching nothing but Jesus. And we can disagree about all sorts of things without differing on that, and so we shouldn't be afraid to look at everything that's going on and call it out for what it is, because we have a hope that supersedes everything that's being threatened in this world and in this life. Regardless of how you go, we all go. We all have a finite number of days and years under the sun. Regardless of where we are in the eschatological timeline, regardless of even how old you are, you can't, there's no guarantees. Whether through some crazy natural disaster, we are very mortal beings. And part of it is just maybe as you get older, you realize, you're not going to live forever. You're not invincible, and you've lost people. But the hope of seeing them again, the hope of being reunited with everyone who's been lost, and like all of history, yes, even Enoch. I look forward to being able to get to know patriarchs from early human history, all kinds of people we've never heard of and never learned about, that probably have amazing testimonies and amazing stories and amazing, lives of being delivered by God through crazy stuff. I think about the whole history of the church from the first century on, and all the stuff that we barely even know about. All the people who endured and were faithful in order that we might have the gospel today, and that we're able to turn around and share it with the world, is because of countless millions of people who lived. And this is why that whole millennial reign little season thing kind of disgusts me, because it's like, you don't even know, you want to talk about slander. You're slandering millions of martyred people who went through things that you and I can't even really comprehend. But they endured that because their hope was in an inheritance that could not be taken away. How many of the kingdoms and the governments that they lived under are no longer existent today? Their legacy, quote unquote, lives on in the gospel itself. And at some point, the call will come down from heaven. There will be no more delay. I believe in that more firmly than ever before. That in his timing and in his wisdom, God will be like, yep, that's it. This is the last day. The day of the Lord has come. The great and terrible day. I do believe we're seeing birth pangs and the acceleration. I think more and more, it totally makes sense to me how, you read, in Matthew 24, in Revelation, and where there's the idea that there's an increasing amount of chaos and sort of cataclysmic things going on, but there's also an increased amount of saying peace, peace when there is no peace. The dissociation will increase. You know what I mean? And when you see it happening all the time, where people can just be in a million different their own little multiverse, their own little bubble of information and input, output, and whatever, because of technology and just because of human nature, that's sort of the weirdest part. How you can have total chaos and death going on, and then people just going about their lives. If the crisis isn't affecting you directly, then you can, especially in America, we have developed this ability to just kind of be disconnected. We're supposedly this big whole. We're all one nation, one people, but then we're also fragmented and dissociated, more than probably any other culture that's ever existed. The plurality, the diversity is everyone's living in their own reality. But there's really only one reality, and Jesus is at the center of that reality. Jesus is the foundation. Jesus is the rock that you can anchor yourself to when everyone else is being blown this way and that way by every wind of teaching, by the trials and tribulations of this life. Jesus told us in this life we will have trouble. We will have opposition. We will have persecution. We need to learn the secret to being content in all situations and all circumstances, and know that our Heavenly Father has not forgotten us, has not abandoned us. He is with us through it all, and that we have an eternal hope, eternal reward that nothing in this life can even compare to. What profiteth a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul?
couldn't hold the weight in my weakness, abandon my escape for a season. The hours turned to days, crushed me. Days crushed me. The windows are so wide open. Audience rolls in the streets, holding thirst for more. Hoping you can find her anxious, turning off the tide in a lighthouse, reaching for my eyes and blind. Foolishly I try to find this lion on my own devices, failing every time. So come flow through me like water on a stone. Settle the dust of my bones. Hardest of hearts sink lowest I am. Come shine, change me like water to wine. Wash all the dirt from my eyes. I don't want the world or the pride of life for a bride. Come for me like water on stone. Settle the dust of my bones. I don't want soul older. So come shine like water to wine. Swipe all the dirt in my eyes. I don't want the world to decide. One
And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled?" And Jesus answering them began to say, "Take heed lest any man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. But take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils, and in the synagogues ye shall be beaten, and ye shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. The gospel must first be published among all nations. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what ye shall speak, neither do ye premeditate. But whatsoever shall be given you in that hour, that speak ye. For it is not ye that speak, but the Holy Ghost. Now the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son. And children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. And let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein to take anything out of his house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. For in those days shall be affliction such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time, neither shall be. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days. And then if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Christ, or Lo, he is there, believe him not. For false Christs and false prophets shall rise, and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. But take ye heed. Behold, I have foretold you all things. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house, and gave authority to his servants, and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest, coming suddenly, he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch.